on to our other top focus at this hour. India's 8th navigation satellite is all set to start its voyage from the second launch pad of the Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota. These are the live visuals that we're getting to you from Sriharikota. India's 8th navigation satellite riding the Indian Space Research Organization's trusted launch vehicle PSLV-XL. To tell you more about India's 8th navigation satellite, the 1425 kg satellite is India's 8th navigation satellite. A consortium led by Bengaluru-based Alpha Design Technologies successfully completed 25% of the developmental work under the guidance of ISRO scientists. India's 8th navigation satellite provides navigation services for ISRO, carries payloads for navigation and ranging, and is easily compatible with the existing 7 satellites. India's 8th navigation satellite is all set to start its voyage from the second launch pad of the Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota. These are the live visuals that we're getting to you from Sriharikota. India's 8th navigation satellite riding ISRO's trusted launch vehicle PSLV-XL. To tell you more about India's latest navigation satellite, this is essentially a 1425 kilogram weighing satellite. A consortium led by Bengaluru-based Alpha Design Technologies has completed 25% of the developmental work of this satellite under the guidance of ISRO scientists. The satellite provides navigation services for the Indian Space Research Organization, carries payloads for navigation and ranging, is easily compatible with the existing 7 satellites, replaces the IRNSS-1H after its atomic clocks had failed. These are the latest visuals that we're getting to you. The clock is ticking. The countdown has begun. Just a few seconds to go for India's 8th navigation satellite to be launched from Sriharikota. The Satish Dhawan Space Center all set. 5 seconds to go for that historic launch. That historic moment is here. ISRO scaling new heights, launching its 8th navigation satellite from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota. This is the latest addition to the already existing 7 satellites in orbit in India's navigation satellite system, which provides standard positioning service to all users and encrypted services to those who are authorized, like defense forces, very similar to the US's global positioning system. The Indian Space Research Organization scaling new heights with the launch of India's 8th navigation satellite. The IRNSS-1H is starting its voyage from the second launch pad of the Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota, riding the ISRO's trusted launch vehicle PSLV-XL. To tell you more about the newest entrant to India's navigation satellite system, this is a 1425 kilogram weighing satellite, 8th of India's navigation satellites. A consortium led by Bengaluru-based Alpha Design Technologies had helped ISRO completing 25% of the developmental work under the guidance of ISRO scientists. Let's go straight across to astrophysicist Ramesh Kapoor from Bengaluru joining us for more on this. What a historic moment that we are witnessing, the significance of ISRO's new high, sir.
Yeah, this is truly a historical moment for India because we are going to put IRNSS satellite 1H in orbit. And actually, it's a part of the 7 satellites constellation. Actually, essentially, we need 4, but there have been 7 satellites already in orbit. Last year in April, the last one, 1G, was placed in orbit. However, there were some atomic clock issues because on 1A, which was launched in July 2013, it began to show the signs where the clocks were failing. There are rubidium atomic clocks, and they are very essential, because when you are doing a GPS kind of a activity, it is essentially related to time, because you send a signal, you receive a signal, and the accuracy of this time span that has lapsed, that has to be very, very correct. So rubidium atomic clocks were failing in 1A. So this one is actually a replacement launch which ISRO has planned, and we are very sure that because it's a PSLV extra large rocket that's going to take it up and place it in the orbit. So very shortly we will know that it's already placed in the in its initial position.
Mr. Kapoor, this latest satellite being put into orbit after the earlier satellites' atomic clocks had failed, help our viewers understand how this process really works.
Actually, originally these clocks were fairly accurate, and European Union's Galileo system also uses them, China also uses them, but at some later time a certain component was introduced in these clocks, and that malfunctioned. So scientists think that possibly some short circuiting has happened and it has failed. In the case of European Union's Galileo system also, the same clocks failed in the same manner. So this one being a replacement launch, we hope that our constellation will still remain complete. In fact, ISRO is already planning one I also to be available as a standby.
All right, and the fact that this is India's 8th navigation satellite, of course, we do know that this is a satellite which will help with a number of facilities useful in search and rescue operations, disaster management. What exactly does a navigation satellite really do, if you could explain to those uninitiated?
See, the idea originally emerged in 1957 when the Sputnik 1 was to be tracked. So Americans thought that we have to know the position of the satellite in the sky at any given time, and then they will send signals, and then through Doppler effect, where the frequency changes because the object is receding from us or approaching us. So from that the idea emerged that why not reverse the process, and then the idea of a GPS emerged. And American GPS system has a 5-meter accuracy, and in orbit you must know to position your satellite within half a meter, otherwise it's a very, very tricky situation. And this is how it emerged, and at a very crucial time India did not receive some very important inputs when I think the Kargil war was going on. So India thought of its own system. So that's how now with the 7 satellites already in orbit, we have a constellation ready. Only this one replaces 1A, and our constellation remains complete. And ISRO is generally using sparingly the atomic clocks, because each satellite has 3 of them. So there are 21 in orbit, and so it uses them in turn. So that this system remains in order, and then we are able to have our own GPS equivalent working in a wonderful manner.
Right, Mr. Kapoor, also this is set to chart a new moment for India's navigation satellite system and for its history of space exploration as well, as there is a new era of the private sector's role in satellite building, which is also being established here.
Yeah, that's right, because for quite some time ISRO was being supplied with small-scale components by the ancillary industry within Bangalore and elsewhere. And now the private sector has really progressed very much, and it reached a level where ISRO is basically joining hands with them. So there is a space park in Whitefield here in Bangalore, and there ISRO has a collaboration going on, and we will see many more things in this kind of collaboration. And obviously this work on one I has already begun. Today's launch is 1H. So next one is already in the process. So private sector is getting involved. Certainly they also have an expertise which matches ISRO's requirements, because ISRO has to work in a very high level of sophistication, and the most advanced technologies have to be used. Otherwise, in space age, then we will be left behind. So that's a must, and it's a very healthy cooperation that one visualizes in the future also.
And Mr. Kapoor, here we're witnessing a historic moment where the Indian Space Research Organization is adding yet another feather to its cap, setting a new milestone.
Oh, that is right, because I think that it's a technology area, high-tech area. So PSLV has proved itself as a real good workhorse. In fact, ISRO has now mastered the GSLV and cryogenic engine technology also. But PSLV has been used for lower weight satellites, and it has always taken the satellites in a most textbook level launches, where everything goes perfectly in order, and the scientists are able to know where exactly at a certain given time the rocket has reached, when the separation has taken place, when the second stage, third stage have fired, and then finally leaving the orbit, leaving the satellite in a specific orbit. So this is a very, each time our hearts palpitate, and the throb also, and when we see the launch successful, we feel very happy also.
Absolutely, it's an ecstatic moment for all of us who are witnessing it. Of course, across the country, there's been a lot of excitement coming in for this moment. Stay with us, please, Mr. Kapoor, as we continue to shed more light on what this moment really means for the country. For those uninitiated, what is India's navigation satellite system all about? Well, this is a rupees 1,420 crore satellite system consisting of 7 satellites in orbit, provides standard positioning service to all users, encrypted service to authorized users, including those in the defense forces. And this is important to highlight, very similar to the United States global positioning system, which helps in navigation and other uses. So this is the latest entrant that we are talking about, India's 8th navigation satellite. It's a newest entrant to India's navigation satellite system that we just told you about. Very similar to the global positioning system. It does offer a host of services. It does already have 7 satellites in orbit, providing standard positioning service to all users. Going back across to Mr. Kapoor, who is still with us, telling us more about what this moment really means for India's space exploration history. A historic moment there, Mr. Kapoor. Also, as we just touch upon the aspect of how the private sector is now also entering satellite building, a new chapter there when it comes to the country's history of space exploration, as the private sector gets involved in the assembling of a satellite here.
See, ISRO is an organization we all feel proud about, and each launch is a great moment in the history of India and the history of the organization itself. And ISRO has presented itself as an organization that inspires the young minds, and many of them are turning towards aerospace sciences, and of course ISRO needs new talent all the time, and I'm sure many more people will be getting interested in. Similarly, it has attracted the private sector also. Private sector has to come up to the standards ISRO expects from them. So that is already happening, and we are seeing that in this launch today. Before this, there were a lot of components being supplied by many of the industries in and around Bangalore, but today's launch is special in the following sense, that here the private sector industry and the company that has joined hands with ISRO also stands tall in our eyes. So this is a remarkable moment, and of course with this launch and with the clock system working in unison. It has to be compatible with the GPS also, so that things are all possible to be seen in the proper perspective. So in a very short while we will hear from ISRO how the launch has taken place. And the GPS system's accuracy is 5 meters. Our positioning service has 10 to 15 meters accuracy, and I'm sure with each launch that takes place in the future, our precision will get better and better, and there's no limit.
Absolutely no limits there to ISRO scaling new heights each time and adding new milestones to its kitty. Stay with us, please, Mr. Kapoor. What exactly does a navigation satellite do? Now, this is the launch of the Indian Space Research Organization's 8th navigation satellite. What exactly does a navigation satellite help in? It ranges from terrestrial and marine navigation. It's also used in search and rescue operations, apart from being useful when it comes to disaster management, vehicle tracking, and also fleet management. Apart from these uses, it also is required for navigational information to track oceanic routes. It also assists in traffic management, guides fishermen to reach potential fishing areas, and also issues weather alerts for fishermen, and also warns them when they are too close to the international maritime boundaries. Going back across to Mr. Kapoor, we're just moments away from ISRO making that announcement. Mr. Kapoor, also, the fact that this is the 8th navigation satellite, a substitute, a replacement in a way for the first satellite that was launched because its atomic clocks failed. For those who are uninitiated, help our viewers understand what that really means, what exactly that clock really does.
See, it's a rubidium atomic clock, and it will give us time right up to the nanoscale levels. And that is very essential because, as I said, that you should know where your satellite is within half a meter precision. So it's a remarkable thing that we already have that kind of a system, and the various uses you have already mentioned. And in the purpose of fleet management, disaster management, and this tracking, target tracking and search and rescue operations, the military uses are there. So obviously it's a multiple utility satellite, and here the basic system is there is a C-band transponder, and it receives waves in a certain frequency, and then you keep a track. And because that track is kept very accurately, so you know the distances. So satellite also tells us where exactly we are on the ground. So that's how these satellites become very useful, and any kind of uses you can think of. And there is also reflectors on board, and they are for laser ranging. So we are able to do laser ranging also. So that means distance measurements, distances and time as a factor. These are two very important aspects where we know where we are and where we know where our satellite is.
All right, stay with us, please, sir. Let's also get in more perspectives from Amitabh Ghosh, scientist joining us over the phone line. Sir, your quick thoughts on this historic moment that we are witnessing, the latest entrant to India's navigation satellite system.
So, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first satellite built by the public sector?
Yes.
Is that right?
There is a new chapter there in India's space exploration where the private sector is also getting involved, a point that we just discussed a short while ago.
Right. So I would just like to comment on that, I guess. I think that's a very significant step.
Yes.
I think this is an operating model used by NASA and other space agencies where, at least for NASA, a lot of this work is done by the private sector so that NASA can concentrate on a very select new challenges. So this is a very important development in that perspective. So the private sector gets involved, and it's a way to really scale up your capabilities. It's a strategy by which some of the repeat satellite building business is handled by the private sector, and ISRO can concentrate on the newly emerging technology challenges. So I think it's a very important milestone in that perspective.
Absolutely, sir. As we also discussed with Mr. Kapoor before you came into the discussion, this is significant, absolutely a new era when it comes to the private sector being involved in the assembling and testing of a satellite. But I want to ask you this as well for the benefit of our viewers. Do you now see this as the future as well, where we could see more involvement of the private sector?
ISRO is, you will be able to tell better, but I think ISRO is trying to involve the private sector more.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be incredible if that is done. And that is good for the private sector, that's good for ISRO. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. For example, recall the space shuttle that NASA used to operate. That was actually run by a Boeing Lockheed company called Space, let's see, I forget the name, but it was a joint entity which used to run. And so they used to actually operate it. And so NASA would set performance goals, provide the funding, but on the ground the implementation is done by these two aerospace leaders. So this is a very tried and tested model which helps in getting things done on schedule. It helps in meeting performance goals. So I think it's a very positive development from the operational standpoint.
Absolutely positive development, to say the least. Amitabh Ghosh, appreciate your joining us on the broadcast. One final remark from Mr. Ramesh Kapoor as we wrap this up. Mr. Kapoor, I would like to also pick your brains further on the involvement of the private sector. That, of course, is also of significance here, apart from the fact that this is the latest entrant to the Indian navigation satellite system. To what extent do you see there is a need or a void when it comes to the private sector getting involved in satellite building in our country?
That is right, because NASA is already doing that, and private sector is joining hands with NASA in many projects. Similarly, ISRO's hands are full. Actually, ISRO is one of the 5 top space agencies in the world, and it stands shoulder to shoulder with any of them. And being with the involvement of private sector, it gives some space to ISRO to concentrate on more core areas. And private sector has already picked up quite a lot, and it is already now considered by ISRO for its meritorious capabilities. So obviously, private sector has a great scope, and with today's launch, floodgates will open, and it depends on ISRO how, in what kind of programs it can involve the private sector.
Absolutely, and as far as the usage of navigation satellites in rescue and relief operations, in also providing alerts to fishermen when they are too close to approaching the international maritime boundaries.
And besides, with ISRO's launch today, it also is a signal to the world what ISRO can do, what ISRO has done. So obviously, it is a great, it makes a great economic sense also. ISRO is already, Antrix Corporation is already doing various projects, and also is a source of income for ISRO in many of the services. So obviously, with time, much more will happen, and we will always have some good news only from ISRO, and that's it. Certainly a great moment. I'm sure ISRO will keep giving us great moments of this kind in the times to come.
Right, so please stay on with us as we get our viewers up to speed and once again take a look at what India's latest entrant to the navigation satellite system is all about. What is India's 8th navigation satellite and what is its significance when it comes to ISRO's new high? This providing navigation services for ISRO, the IRNSS-1H also carries payloads for navigation and ranging. It is easily compatible with the existing 7 satellites in orbit. Important to highlight here that this latest entrant essentially is replacing the first satellite that was launched after its atomic clocks had failed. It replaces the IRNSS-1A after the atomic clocks failed. So this is the 8th navigation satellite and is easily compatible with the existing 7 satellites, provides navigation services for the Indian Space Research Organization. This in addition to the rupees 1420 crore satellite system of navigation that the country possesses, which provides standard positioning service to all users, encrypted services to authorized users as well. Now, important to highlight here that apart from the basic standard positioning service provided to all users, it also provides special services to those authorized users like those in the defense forces. And it's also important to highlight, as Mr. Kapoor also pointed out, it is very similar to the United States global positioning system. And that's a point I want to take further with Mr. Kapoor. As you just pointed out, the latest addition to Indian navigation satellite system essentially goes a step further when compared to the United States global positioning system in terms of its range.
Yeah, certainly. See, GPS of the USA, its accuracy is 5 meters. And our system has an accuracy of 10 to 15 meters. So goal is to not only reach that and do things better than that. So obviously ISRO is always will be working on such goals, and for navigation purposes, for tracking certain important things in and around the country. It's very important because the whole thing depends on, we send a signal, we receive it, and how long it has taken, the whole thing depends on that. And then the satellite is solving many equations and then telling us where the object of our interest is and how accurate its position is. So accuracy is the need of the hour, and so that we can take next steps for the purpose of either rescuing things or certain management or reaching things somewhere. So for example, in disaster management, you know that such a service is so very important. And similarly, from the point of view of our armed forces, such a satellite is a boon, because we do not have to depend on any other space agency for data, and our own system is there in place, and ISRO is doing a very crucial job so that the positioning system that we have visualized remains in place and keeps working and is certain and fully and accurately operational. So all the time there is a need for India to do better and better from the point of view of various users who will use the data that these satellites will generate, or the signals that satellites will give.
Absolutely. So ISRO's new high there as it launches its 8th navigation satellite of the country, compatible with the already existing 7 satellites in orbit in India's navigation satellite system. Let's leave it there for the moment. Mr. Kapoor, appreciate you joining us on this discussion. That will remain our top focus in our later editions as well. But with that, it's a wrap on this one. Stay with us.